Well, there we are in Mark chapter 10, your name in neon. And maybe that's what the two disciples, in a roundabout way, manner of speaking, maybe they're looking for fame, prominence. Verse 35, and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come unto him, of course Jesus, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we desire. So, obviously that's a prayer request. That is a prayer request. Prayer is talking to Jesus. And he is there for them to talk to, and he's no less here for us to talk to. And so this really is about a prayer request. It's an interesting prayer request. And he said unto them, What would ye that I should do for you? And God cares. For him to ask that question demonstrates that he cares and that he is listening. And I'm glad about that. I'm thankful that when we go to him in prayer, that he is listening and that he's interested. The question just speaks volumes. What would ye that I should do for you? And so they continue in the prayer. They said unto him, Grant unto us that we may sit, one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand, in thy glory. So when he is seated upon his throne in heaven, they want to be on his left and right hand. They wanted to be seated right next to Jesus, who will be on his heavenly throne. What a remarkable request. I don't think I've ever read any request like this anywhere else in the Bible that I'm aware of. I mean, it's a remarkable request. We want to sit next to you in heaven when you're seated upon your throne. And verse 38, but Jesus said unto them, Ye know not what ye ask. Wow. And then he poses a couple of interesting questions back to James and John. We know that John was seated next to Jesus at the Lord's Supper because John is the one that laid his head upon the bosom of Jesus. John the Beloved. And so he was next to Jesus at the Lord's Supper. He wants to be next to Jesus when he's seated upon his heavenly throne. He just wants to be next to Jesus. And so he says, Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of? And be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? Speaking about his great passion, his time of suffering, and they said unto him, We can. Verse 39, we can. And Jesus said unto them, Ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I am baptized withal, shall ye be baptized. Speaking of their suffering for Christ, their martyrdom, John, of course, boiled by the Roman emperor in oil, but lived through it and was then exiled to Patmos, where he was given the revelation of Christ. And of course, the disciples, yes, they did drink of the cup and of the baptism, sawn asunder, pulled apart by horses, tortured in various ways. Yes, they did. And then in verse number 40, but to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give. Wow. So Jesus just told them that's not up to me to decide that, which I take to mean then would be up to the Heavenly Father. Wow. And you can't help but wonder who will be seated at the left and right hand of Jesus. Wow. We know Jesus is seated at the right hand of his Father, so wow, that's just all very thought-provoking. But it shall be given to them for whom it is prepared. Okay. And then the others are listening in, the other 10, and when the 10 heard it, they began to be much displeased with James and John. Why are they displeased? All kinds of reasons. Maybe they would like to be considered for that position of honor. But Jesus called them to him and saith unto them, Ye know that they which are accounted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. And so I think Jesus is taking us to the heart of the matter, because God always looketh upon the heart. And I think that Jesus is speaking to what he is finding in their heart, and I think it's a power quest for power, because he mentions the word rule over and lordship over them and exercise authority upon them. And it's interesting that I don't think Jesus would just come up with this for no apparent reason. And I think what he's doing is he's looking into the hearts of these disciples. And so he's speaking to what he's finding in their heart. And I think it has something to do with a quest for power and authority, right? Because if you're seated next to Jesus, then that's a place of great prominence. And but then he goes on in verse number 43, and he says, "But so shall it not be among you." So it's kind of like, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be in control? Who's going to get to tell the others what to do? And I think that is part of why they're upset, the other 10, at the 2. I really don't think they want to be told what to do by James and John. They probably think, well, we've got as much right to tell them what to do as they might think they have to tell us what to do. And so And so, but look at verse 43, but so shall it not be among you. And I think he really zeroes in on what's going on in their thought, their mind. But whoso will be great among you shall be your, what class? Your minister. In other words, your servant. So, in Mark chapter 10, and verse number 43, and God says, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. I mean, so James and John, I think this is an attempt to, I said by the title, get their names in neon, position of prominence and power, and so, their thinking is very unlike the mind of Christ as it concerns being promoted. So in verse 43, he says, but so shall it not be among you. But whosoever will be great among you shall be your minister. It means servant. In other words, don't be asking who can serve you. But so then how should the question be framed? Rather ask, who can I serve? Amen? Who can I serve? It's quite a difference, isn't it? And I really think that's what's going on based upon this response of Jesus to James and John is and then in verse 44 it continues, and whosoever of you will be the chiefest, the one vested with the power and the authority and the control, the chiefest, shall be servant of all. Wow. Would you look at the way God thinks, the mind of Christ here? I mean, see, in this world system, the chiefest is served by all. But in God's system, the chiefest serves all. Do you see the difference here? It's just so the mind of Christ. And then he kind of puts the finishing touch here. He says in verse 45. Now, don't miss this capstone statement. He says, for even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister. What a powerful thought. And that's our example. It's not looking, and thinking about what others can do for us, but rather, God, show me how I can serve others. That's the example of Christ. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. To give his life a ransom for many. So, here's the thought. Being first now means being last later. Wow. Being first now means being last later. Go to these words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19, and so we'll pick it up in verse 27. It's a great passage. Then answered Peter and said unto him, that would be to Jesus. It's another teaching moment from Jesus with his followers. And so Peter said unto Jesus, he says, behold, we have forsaken all their families, their jobs. We have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? Because see, the rich man, he decided not to forsake all, and he walked away sad. He walked away rich. He walked away rich but sad. And so when Peter and the other disciples saw this young rich ruler walk away from Jesus to embrace all of his wealth, his lifestyle, everything that they had forsaken to follow Jesus, it prompted them to think, what shall we have therefore? And Jesus, in verse 28 and 29, he answers their question. And Jesus said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, and remember, that means they forsook all to follow him, in the regeneration, speaking of the time yet to come, and which includes heaven, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, which is, remember, where James and John wanted to be seated on his left and right, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones. And a throne is a place of what? A throne symbolizes what? If somebody's on a throne, what do they have? They have authority. They have power. Which is what James and John wanted. That's what they were asking for. Judging the 12 tribes of Israel to rule over them. And then notice in verse 29, but what James and John are asking is they want their throne right next to either side of Jesus. They don't want to be on any throne. They want their throne to be right on next to Jesus. And everyone that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, relatives, families, father or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. And then look at verse 30. Because first now means last later. Last now means first later. That's kind of hard to get the mind around that, I know. But look at this. But many that are first, do you know what the word means? Selfish, self-centered. Shall be last. Eschatos is the Greek word, and it means lowest in rank. So, see, it's like we get so enmeshed in the world system and the world's way of thinking that we struggle in this matter of serving, having a servant's heart, being a servant, a willingness to give our life away now in the service to Christ and to others, that they may come to know Christ. Because, we've grown up in this world system, and, so Jesus says, but many that are first shall be last, or lowest in rank. And then he says, and the last shall be first, which the Greek word first is protos, and it means highest in rank. Highest in rank. So, what is he teaching here? Well, what I'm getting from this is that if we are of a mind that we just want to be served now, if we want to be first now, we're going to be last later. But if we're willing to be last now in this matter of putting others ahead of ourselves in serving, if we're willing to be last now, according to Jesus, we'll be first later. Wow. I know. These just incredible passages. And they are so opposite. It's like everybody's trying to climb up the ladder, right, to get to the top. Everybody wants to get up the ladder to get to the top, to have all that power and that authority so they can have everybody doing for them. But you know what I'm getting? Jesus is saying, don't be trying to go to the top of the ladder right now. Go the other direction on the ladder. Yeah.
When Jesus said that they don't know what they're asking, because if Jesus is going to be on the right hand of God,
Right.
they're basically saying they want to outshine God, right? I mean, because Jesus is sitting on the right hand of God,
They don't know what they're asking.
right. So Jesus,
Yeah.
basically, is that what he's implying? You're trying to
Yeah.
say you want to sit, you want to kick my father out, or you want to be, over him. I don't know, but it just seems.
Well, based upon what he teaches them, he's looked into their heart and he addresses what he finds in their heart, and it's a power control trip. And the other 10, they're not having it. We're not having this. Can't really blame them. So there's an old saying, the way up is down. The way up is down. I know this is so opposite of the world we live in. Now, we live in the world, but if you know Christ, if you know Jesus, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. So, let's drop down to Luke 22. Luke 22. And it kind of touches on this in several. So, by the way, as it concerns service, let's think about that for just a quick moment. Service. Where do people frequent? What business places are people inclined to frequent, to go to? Why do people, what is one of the top considerations for why people will go to a business establishment? If they get good what? If they get good service. If they get good service, what then will be the outcome for the business in the community? It'll be successful. It'll be successful. Yeah. Boy, there's food for thought right there, isn't there? Does that have a place in local New Testament church ministry, good service? Is that a factor? I'm asking, is good service a factor in the outcome of a local New Testament church? Good service. Everybody likes to be treated like they have worth and value, or another way to say it, like they're important. Some businesses will say, we'll treat you like kings and queens, and this is all about service. It really is. Ministry, do the word study, means service. It's serving others. Serving others. If the service is lousy, what's the inevitable outcome for that business? You know what that means? I'm losing my job, But people have choices. People do have options, That's the world we live in. So I'm really thinking Jesus is teaching vital lessons to these men will then, when Christ descends and goes back to heaven, these men will then go on and do what? What are these men being taught by? They're being groomed and taught and discipled by Jesus to do what beyond his ascension back to heaven? They're going to spread the gospel, and they're going to plant or start or begin churches. All over, churches. And I think what he's giving these men, like James and John, is, you men need to understand my heart. I didn't come to be ministered unto. I came to minister unto others and to give my life a ransom for many. I really believe what he's giving these men is the recipe for success. And it is good service, having a servant's heart. Ministering to others. And they're balking because they want others to minister to them. And Jesus says, no, that's not the way it works. No, that's not my way. That's not how it goes. Anyway, Luke 22. Let's get over to Luke chapter 22 here. And so we'll drop down, let's begin in verse 24. So again, that's Luke 22. And this is one of the harmonic passages of Mark chapter 10, which we already looked at in the harmony of the Gospels. But here are some other interesting statements. Verse 24, all right. And there was also a strife among them. See, so when you have the mindset and a power and control struggle where it's now, you lose the mind of Christ and it's no longer about serving, now it becomes about, well, who's going to serve me? Well, now look what you have and there was also strife, strife among them. Which of them should be accounted the greatest? And that's not what it's all about. Yeah, think about this. Which of them should be accounted the greatest? I mean, what is going on here? I mean, that's kind of like a look at me moment. Who is the greatest? Who is the greatest, class? There's only one. And only he is worthy. Jesus is the greatest. See, so what's happening is when you get this mindset of the world where you're no longer looking for who you can serve and be a blessing to and an encouragement to and a help to, it's now, hey, who's gonna serve me? Who's gonna do for me? And then you have strife, see? And so again, verse 25, he said unto them, the kings of the Gentiles, exercise lordship over them. See now, so what he does is, he is contrasting the whole mindset of the world with the mind of Christ for the sake of, illustration. And they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. So that's the way the world works. It's all about, getting your name in neon, and now everybody's there to, serve you because you have, fame and fortune and importance. But look what he says. He says in verse 26, but ye shall not be so, speaking to his disciples. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger. And he that is chief, as he that doth what? Serve. See, and here's another thought. Serve here, that means serve now, and you'll rule there. You'll rule there. The greatest testimony for Jesus and the greatest blessing that any child of God could invite upon him or herself now would be to serve now, understanding that if we do that, according to Christ, we will rule later. I mean, think about that. And then as far as the service of Christ, as far as the service of Christ, who did Jesus serve? What does the service of Christ encompass? Who does it encompass? Let's look at 1 John chapter 2. Was his service to just a select group? How encompassing was the service of Christ? Well, okay, let me get myself there. That's 1 John, 1 John chapter 2, and so we'll look at one verse. And so, was his service rendered just to a select group or few? How encompassing was his service? All right, now look, are you there? 1 John 2:2. And he is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, for ours only. Now, help me with this. Which group is that? Ours only. The believers, the saved, the children of God. So how encompassing was his service? But also so when Christ served, did he serve only a select group of people, or was he in fact serving the entire world? The entire world. The entire world. Go to John 3, verse 16, if you would, please. John 3. Some would say the most well-known verse in all of the Holy Bible. Some have called this the Bible in a nutshell, or the Bible all wrapped up in one verse. John 3:16, for God so loved the world. So, and we're addressing the question, so how all-encompassing was the ministry of Christ? Was it exclusive just to his people? To just those who know him, who have believed in him, have trusted in him? I think it goes beyond that, because the Bible says the world. For God so loved the world. So when he gave his only begotten Son, did he give his only begotten Son just for a select group of people? Or did he give his only begotten Son for the entire world? The entire world. That whosoever believeth in him should not perish, and that literally means go to hell, perish, but have everlasting life. And do we know how the world feels about the one who served all of them? Do we have any indication of how the world feels about the one who served them? Now, I'm talking the world. How does the world feel about Jesus who served them? Well, they do reject him, and you remember what Jesus says, marvel not if the world does what? Marvel not if the world hates you. Because it hated him first. And he goes on to say, if the world hated me, the world will hate you. So, as it concerns the example of Christ, the example of God in service, should we limit our service and our ministry just to believers only? Or should our ministry, our service, go beyond believers only?
Well, they can see the love of Christ through us when we minister to those that are.
So we should minister to them with the hope that God's love will impact them and draw them into his kingdom. And it's really hard, isn't it hard to serve people that don't appreciate, that aren't grateful? Isn't it challenging to serve people that I'm going to ask you, did Christ serve people that took advantage of him and used him?
Yes.
And I know our tendency is to limit our service to people that are dotting their I's and crossing their T's in all the right ways. But what is the example of Christ as it concerns ministry and people who take advantage, who use, and don't appreciate? And I'll leave you with that thought tonight. What is the example of Christ in all of this? I mean, well,
Christian person that walked by this man and was well, he said was showing the love of God, and someone that they felt like wasn't showing the love of God took care of him. So he was ministering to mankind that didn't have a way.
well, their ministry was exclusive to a certain group of people, whereas the Good Samaritan, he had Christ-like ministry. And so, it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to work hard. It's hard to sacrifice, to give when people take advantage. And they're not grateful, they're not thankful, they want to use you. But I always come back to the example of Christ. And what is his example? Did he serve just an exclusive group of people, or did he serve the world? He served the world. And, anyway, maybe you have more questions than answers now, but anyway. I want to say that there's all kinds of ministry opportunities, all right, feeding people. Wintertime coats for people. Some churches, you know what they do? They go out into the public highways and they clean up trash. They clean up trash for the community. Our daughters went to a church in Lancaster, California. They sent the kids out and they cleaned up trash on the highway as a ministry to the community. Because, everybody's driving by, that's so awful looking. It's all this garbage, But they actually went out and did something about it. Served, ministered, as a testimony for Christ. And there's all kinds of, toys for children that otherwise are not going to get any toys at, Christmas or birthdays. What about a ministry that helps young people go to a camp where they can hear about Jesus and make a decision about accepting him as their personal Savior? And what about helping people in whatever way they need help that aren't grateful, that don't appreciate, that take advantage, that use? What about that? And the only thing I can offer is the example of Christ, the example of Jesus Christ. I don't know where else to go with it. I just don't know where else to go with it. And I want to say, my wife and I were talking, we've not spent a 4th of July at a backyard barbecue, you know, or we don't have a swimming pool, so it would not be called the backyard pool party, but hey, it could be a backyard with a water hose party where you're spraying each other down, you know. We've had a few of those, right? We haven't done anything like that with friends in over 20 years. And those are nice things to do, aren't they? To be with family and friends and have a nice cookout and then, you know, go someplace and see the fireworks. By the way, if you want to see the best illegal you know, just went out. Are we live streaming? We're live streaming. Gag me. You want to see the best fireworks show in the valley, you just come park right here. And you've never seen anything like it, what goes on around this church property on the 4th of July. I am telling you, it is the most amazing fireworks show. It's not the church doing it, it's just all around the church, you know? Yeah, you know, but when we get back, because we bring all our stuff from the booth back here to put it away in the modular, this thing looks like a war zone going on down here, I'm telling you. But you know, what we as a family, of course our kids have grown up, we still have the one daughter here and her family, but what we've done for probably 20 years now, you know what we're doing on the 4th of July? We're sitting in a fireworks booth, serving the community who's coming to get fireworks, so we can send kids to Bible camp so they can meet Jesus. See, what Jesus is saying is, first now, last later. Serve here, and you will rule there. So, make your choice. Just make your choice. I submit to you, if you are last now and you are serving here now, you will have no regrets there. I submit that to you. I don't think a single one of you in heaven will walk up to me and say, you know, Pastor, I am so angry at you because I served there and now I'm ruling here. I don't think there'll be any complaints at all. May God bless His word.